Welcome to Naperville Notables. I'm Liz Spencer. Today I had the opportunity to sit down with Police Chief Bob Marshall and find out a little bit about the man behind the badge and his goals for the city of Naperville. When did you know you wanted to be a police officer?
Police officer, let's see. It was when I was at Western Illinois University. One of my good friends in my fraternity had a long line of police officers in his background, and I was a sophomore there. And I was majoring in pre-law. So initially I thought I would want to be a lawyer. And then I started talking to my good friend, and he said, you know, Bob, why don't you take some law enforcement classes? So I started taking some law enforcement classes and just got really excited about a career in law enforcement and public service. I wanted to get into something with regard to public service, and I always liked, I had a sense of like justice and, you know, kind of rooting always for the underdog, and I felt that this would be the best way to really serve in a public way. And also, I liked the excitement of police work. And something different was happening every single day. And it wasn't the routine job where you sit behind a desk and work 9 to 5. It was different hours. You worked weekends, you worked nights, and you know, one day you're getting a call of this, and next day you're getting a call of that. You're maybe looking for a lost child, and next day you're looking, you know, you're responding to an armed robbery or things like that. So I really liked the variety. But the essence was really public service. That was, you know, I guess, part of my upbringing, you know, to serve others.
And what did Mom and Dad say when you came home and said, you know, hey, I'm not going to be a lawyer, I want to be a cop?
Yeah. I remember my dad, you know, when I first graduated from Western Illinois in a degree with law enforcement, and then I had to go find a job. And usually it was the early 80s, the late 70s is when I started looking for a job, and I was testing everywhere. And he was like, hurry up, Bob, get a job, you know. And I had a little clipboard, and I said, I'm testing here and I'm testing there, and he always would be checking on me, making sure I'm up and out and trying to get a job. So he was very encouraging. So was my mom about the profession. Thought it was a very honorable job for me. It had structure. I wasn't the most structured person growing up. So I think they were very encouraged that the guy's going to get some structure in his life now, and he's going to have a direction, and he's going to have a purpose. So they were very encouraging. And initially I was offered the job in Will County. So I became a deputy sheriff in Will County. And I was there for 2 years. And then one day going to roll call, I saw on the bulletin board an advertisement to be a Naperville police officer. And you know, I was working in Will County. I really loved it. It was a lot of action. You know, I had some great friends there, but I always wanted to work for a municipality. I just felt that was, you know, a place for me and eventually my family, that I wanted to live in a community. So I took a drive up to Naperville, drove through the community, and I just loved it. So I went back down, you know, applied for Naperville, and eventually they called me, and I was hired as a Naperville police officer.
So, and just so, because I've always wanted to know, when you're working for the sheriff and you're working versus working for a municipality, what's the difference?
The difference is in Will County and in county sheriff departments, number one, we're responsible for the detention area. And that's where my career started. I worked in the Will County Jail for 6 months. So it really helped hone my skills to deal with that type of population. And in terms of patrolling, we patrolled the unincorporated areas. So the areas that were not incorporated in a municipality. And to me, in Will County, all those unincorporated areas, I looked far enough ahead and said, all these unincorporated areas are going to be swallowed up by municipalities, so what's going to be left for us to patrol? Plus, one of the things that really attracted me to Naperville was the environment, the atmosphere, just the possibility for advancement in the future with the tremendous amount of growth that I saw here. And the other thing was that they valued the college education. In fact, when I was first hired, you got extra pay and incentive pay because you had a college degree. So that told me that they valued education here in this department. So there was an opportunity to progress up the chain of command and eventually get to a leadership position because education matters.
Wow. And so who was the chief of police when you got hired?
James Teal.
Okay. And so in 1971, You became a beat cop in 1977.
77. Yeah.
So tell me, what was Naperville like?
Well, we had 4 beats, population of around 40,000, very quiet community, bedroom community, but the growth is what excited me about coming to Naperville. Future possibilities, future positions. Most of our calls at that time had to do with juveniles and drinking. And when I came from Will County, I was responding to felonies in progress in Will County pretty much every night. Then I came to Naperville and I was going, is that all you guys do is chase kids around with beer? You know, so it was a transition for me to come from Will County to Naperville. But the potential here was just dramatic and very exciting. A lot of the calls were, you know, thefts, burglaries in progress, things like that. You know, so our crime rate was low. It's still low today, and we take pride in that. We want a low crime rate, right? You know, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, really, it was the size of the department, and then the tremendous growth. We went from 40,000 to 150,000 residents. We went from about 35 to 40 officers to now we have 170 officers sworn in our department.
Wow, that's a big leap.
Yeah.
So if you were thinking, you know, you're looking back and you liked the variety, you liked variety, but you had some structure.
Right.
And what are some traits that come into being a police officer?
I think, well, first of all, it's integrity. Number one character trait. And every officer that's hired here since 2012, May of 2012, I meet with, and I talk about the 5 characteristics for a successful police officer. And these are characteristics that I have that our police officers that work here have. And one of the key characteristics is a solid group of character traits. And number one is integrity, being honest. And one of the things I ask them to do is I give them an article that I got at the FBI Academy from an instructor there about the integrity, temptation, and the new police officer. I give them that article and I ask them to write me a paper. It can't be more than 2 pages. And what integrity means to them as a new police officer. And I have all those papers and I read them and I talk to them and I share them with my staff. Again, the value of integrity is number one. And the public's trust. One of the things that we have as a police department is the public's trust. And if we lose that, then we've lost everything. The public needs to trust that when a police officer shows up, they're professional, they're well-trained, and that they can handle their business, and they do it in a professional and respectful manner. So those are some of the things, some of the traits that I came into this job with that I continually enhance. Leadership, I'm kind of a leadership geek. I read all kinds of books about leadership. In fact, I just had our staff meeting on this Tuesday, just yesterday. And, I talked about some of the leadership activities, responsibilities that I have, and I listed 5 of them for my staff, and things that we need to continue to build on. And the number one thing that I have is my responsibility as a police chief here and leading this department is that people matter. You take care of the people that work here, and that we serve the public that we take the oath to serve. So it's the people part of the business that first attracted me to it and continues to drive my leadership going forward.
And would you say you have a leadership style?
Yeah, I do. It's participatory and collaborative. And I want feedback. I understand that everybody has blind spots, and if you don't have trusted people around you to tell you, when you're getting a little off track and to give you some, good feedback, I think as a leader, you're missing opportunities. So that's one of the styles I have. So I value feedback. I'm also a big reader, so that enhances my leadership. I read a lot of biographies about successful leaders, like what it takes to be a successful leader. And then I share that with my staff. I just talked to them yesterday about a book I just read from a writer, an author who went to Harvard, and the book is called The One Thing. And it's like, how do we have so many things that we want to do, and we talked about our to-do list. How many things are on a to-do list? Well, 20, 25 things. How do you get down to the one thing that really matters? And that one thing is often, and I call it the 3 Ps. It's about purpose. You got to know what your purpose is. You got to prioritize, and then you got to be productive. So if you look at those three things, that will help you determine what your one thing is that you would like to accomplish. So that all goes into my leadership style that I bring to the department and to the city every single day.
Well, I mean, leadership is hugely important, and it's also, you're one chief and you have a lot of people, so you have to train the leaders underneath you and empower them.
Right.
And trust them.
Right.
And trust is a big thing.
Yeah.
So when you think about when you were a patrol officer and then you got moved to, I'm going to cheat here and look at my notes because I get it mixed up, sergeant, and then to lieutenant, who were the role models for you during that time period?
Boy, I think the role model for my career, my number one person that comes out was my father. He taught me, I talked a little bit about integrity and about my core values. And constantly I heard from him, don't lie, cheat, or steal. I heard about that constantly, and I passed that on to my kids. It's about being integrity, true to your word. Actions are more important than words, because that's what people look at. They look at my actions. My kids look at my actions. Everybody who works here, our 270 employees, are looking at my actions. And I take that very seriously every single day. So my father, first of all, and then I had a sergeant by the name of Bill Zitman, one of my first sergeants, that really provided me the opportunities, that gave me the correction, because I made mistakes. I still remember the day when I arrested somebody for DUI. It was at the old police department, and I had handcuffed him to the bench. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I know that only him and I were in that police department. And then I heard the door slam, because I was in the other room getting a booking number. And I'm thinking, wow, it was just me and him, and I heard the door slam. So I wonder what happened. So I looked and I saw those handcuffs, and he wasn't there. And I looked out the back door, and there he was running across the back parking lot. Well, so I called on the radio. I said, this guy's escaped. So the other officers came, and fortunately they were able to capture him a couple of blocks down. But the call I had to make was to my sergeant, which was Bill Zitman, and to call him on the radio. And I still remember his number, 109 from 151, can I meet you? And I had to tell him that my prisoner got away. And of course, he looks at me and he goes, Bob, do not ever let that happen again. And that was my reprimand. That was it. And I never let it happen again. But I learned, through his way of dealing with that situation, that people make mistakes. Let's look at the intent of the mistake. Is it an obvious mistake that people are making, or is it not? And so he really helped, mold me into a police officer. And I think he was one of the most inspirational people I've had, in my early stages. Now, since I've been, older and as a captain and a chief, there's been other role models that I've counted on to provide me with the coaching, the mentoring that I need to continue to be the leader here and continue to grow and develop.
I think people often underestimate that you need mentors throughout your career, not just when you started, but I bet he saw in that young officer, Marshall, the oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, and this will never happen again, because now I know. Now I know, right. Yeah.
And then I can, I pay that forward, when I'm dealing with officers who I know are making an honest mistake, and then I can deal with it the same way he dealt with that situation with me. So it made an impact on me, obviously, because I'm still talking about it, right. And it happened many years ago.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about, so you recognized that there was growth here, and you made it happen. You went from officer to sergeant to lieutenant to captain.
Right.
In what time period was that? That was,
That took about 27 years.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Took a long time, Liz.
No, that's actually that's a fairly good growth rate. So
yeah.
And when you became captain, was that was that the goal, or?
Actually, the goal was to become chief of police here in Naperville, and I actually applied for the job in 1990 when Dave Dial was hired from Lakewood, Colorado. I was only a sergeant, but I filled out the application, went as far as I could in the process till I got a call and said, thanks but no thanks. But that was my goal at that time. Someday be the chief of police in Naperville, and it just took a while.
Yeah, you just
sometimes good things take a while.
That's right. You have to kind of take a different route sometime. So talk to me a little bit about that decision from going from the police force to assistant city manager.
Yeah, that was like a turning point in my career because I was a captain, and Friday afternoon I got a call from Peter Burchard one day, and he says, well, why don't you stop over this afternoon around 2 or 3 o'clock? So I said, well, I wonder what that's about, because my goal was always to become chief of police, and I had a couple of recruiters that were offering me opportunities throughout the country to become chief in different communities. And actually, the recruiter finally called me one day and said, Bob, there are no other Napervilles out there, because I keep on saying no, because I'm trying to look for a community like Naperville. There weren't any. So I'm happy here, so I'm just going to stay here. So Peter calls me, so I go over and he asks, have you ever thought about the assistant city manager job? And I said, well, not really. I know Julie Carroll is leaving to become the city manager in Evanston, and there's an opening there, but no, I really haven't thought about it. So he said, took 5 minutes, explained a little bit about the job, and he said, I think you'd be a solid candidate for that job. And so I thought about it. I talked to my family, talked to some trusted friends I have, prayed about it, and the following week I called them and said, okay, I'm putting in my resume, I'm in. We'll see what happens. So then they did a nationwide search, and it was like 300 people applied for this assistant city manager job. And he took months to make the decision. Finally, he came over here, sat in this office right here with Dave Dial and myself and said, I'm going to offer you the job of the assistant city manager. I said, oh, I accept. So it was a turning point for my career, because I was really sad to really leave law enforcement, not knowing if I'd ever have the opportunity to come back. So I went over there to City Hall, threw myself into that job, and I really respected the way Peter did his job. So I think this was going to be one of my mentors. And I thought, well, I'm going to work for Peter for years, and I enjoy it, loving Naperville, chance to really expand my knowledge of city government, learn what it's like to work with the elected officials in a closer manner, a mayor and 8 council members, and learn about the electric department, the finance department, the other municipal departments that provided services to their residents. So then, except after 2 years, he retired, he resigned. And then council went into closed session and they came out, and I remember Margot, who's the city attorney, I was standing outside, they go, they just appointed you city manager pro tem. I said, what? I didn't even get a chance to negotiate anything? I want a country club membership. Nope, you're starting as acting city manager, and it'll probably be for 2 or 3 months. And I said, okay, that's fine, So I did the job the best I could. 2 or 3 months turned into almost a year. And then Doug Krieger was hired as a city manager, so I went back to my assistant city manager job, and really enjoyed working with Doug and working with the council. It really broadened my knowledge base in terms of what it really takes to run a municipality of this size. So it expanded my knowledge base. I was able to contribute in a broader sense and learn a lot more about the government. And then in 2012, Dave Dial announced his retirement, and Doug Krieger talked to me. He says, "Are you interested in possibly, competing for the position of police chief?" And I said, "Well, let me think about it." And it took me 2 seconds, and I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to go back in the police department," because I had been witness to some of the really troubling times since 2008 with the recession, the impact the recession had on our city employees and specifically the police department. And I saw that, and it really pained me to watch some of the things that were happening. And I thought, well, I still have a lot of friends here. I saw and heard from them some of the distressing times that they were going through. And I thought, well, if I ever get the opportunity, I'd love to go back over there and see if I can make a difference. So it turned out that's what happened. In May in 2012, I was hired as the police chief, the 10th police chief for the city of Naperville.
Wow, that's great. It's sort of like like the dream come true. You came back, and now you're the chief. So but it probably, being assistant city manager probably gave you a different perspective. And now you're coming back into the police force. So you had this. You could see both the city side and the police side. So making you more prepared to be chief.
Yeah, and it helped me really understand a little bit about, a lot more, not a little, but a lot about what our elected officials go through. Because I was for 6 years, I was in those closed session discussions. So I understood, going to get the agenda, the council agendas, the preparation that the city council has to go through to make really important decisions about our community. So I understood what went on behind the scenes because I was behind the scenes.
Well, you had firsthand knowledge too of the budget and the revenue streams.
I did. So I understood that. I learned a lot about the financial aspects of the business and what it takes to run a city of this size, and being responsible to the taxpayers and to make sure that you use that money to the best of your ability to create an efficient and effective government, specifically in the police department. That's where my interest has been since May of 2012. So it was very interesting to really understand from the elected officials' point of view what it takes to make those decisions and to run those council meetings.
It's an interesting meeting, so that's for sure. Yeah. So since you've been chief, there's been a couple big challenges that come up. One of the things, and I think it goes back a little bit to you wanting to make a difference and working and being a good role model, is the heroin problem that has been facing Naperville. That the police department has really kind of stepped up and taken full charge at. Talk to me a little bit about why that's important and why the prevention aspect is so important.
Well, it's the prevention and the educational aspect. And even before I was chief, there was programs put in place here by Dave Dial, and that was these community-wide forums. The focus being educating not only the youth but the adults on the negative impacts of heroin, because that drug has changed since I first became a police officer. It used to be the drug that people would have to liquefy and then shoot into their arms or legs with a syringe. Now it can be easily snorted, it's very cheap, and it's highly potent and addictive. So our focus has been twofold, really: the education and the preventative aspects, but also the enforcement part. It's still our responsibility that when we locate these individuals who are selling this poison, that we arrest them, we detect them, and we cut off that supply. But the key to success is the prevention, the education. Because if there's nobody wanting the heroin, nobody wants to take the heroin, the dealers will dry up because they don't have any customers. So we've put a lot of efforts in terms of programs and working with the many non-for-profits in Naperville, such as Kids Matter, Parents Matter too, and I'm on that board, to make sure we educate the parents on the evils of heroin. And the Narcan program, which started with the DuPage County police chiefs, and we've expanded to this department, and it was well reported in the news that within 5 days of 2 of our officers being trained in the use of Narcan, which reverses the effects of a heroin overdose, our officers were able to save the life of a 17-year-old girl and give her another chance at life. But once you save the lives, you got to get them into some type of intervention program, because that drug is so addictive. So that's a serious concern. It is a problem here in Naperville. Some people think, oh, there's no heroin problems here. We're immune from that. That's not true. It is here. Some of our young kids are taking it, and it's a very, very dangerous drug. It can cost you your life, and I've seen it destroy entire families.
But it's very dangerous, and I think the key there is a lot of us think about the old heroin, and it's not. It's new and improved in a really bad way.
Yes.
In a very bad way. You've also had a lot of trouble with downtown, and downtown violence that has been associated with drinking. The downtown has grown since the time you were a beat cop to now. I mean, we're such a destination. We're a small Chicago. People make a decision: do I go to Naperville? Do I go to Chicago?
Right. Yeah. Which is a good thing for our community. It's a great thing that people come and they can enjoy themselves, and you hear it on the radio. Come to Naperville. Well, we're a regional draw. People from all over come over. Not only the Chicagoland area, but from other states that come here to enjoy our downtown, our Riverwalk. It's a great place, and we want to keep it that way. We understand in the police department that that's our crown jewel, and we've had some people, and it's a small percentage, Liz. It's really a small percentage of the people who come here and don't abide by our laws and our ordinances and create the problems. I'd say 5 or 10%. 90% of the people that come down there behave themselves and have a wonderful time. You have that small percentage that disrupt things. So one of the things I did when I first became chief is I looked at our downtown plan. and we revised our downtown plan to become more proactive in terms of our approach in the downtown. And by proactive, I mean being engaged with the owners of the establishments and to work with them, work with some of our downtown groups, the downtown, the DNA, for example. The Restaurant Association has been very, very good. Christine Jeffries' group, has been very helpful in us putting together our plan that allows us to be more proactive, and by being proactive, setting up systems and processes to get on top of the problems before they occur. One of the values obviously is police presence. It does matter. If you have 4 corners and you put 3 officers on the 4 corners, guess where that crime is going to likely be committed? On that 4th corner where there's no police. But we don't have enough police to put them on every single corner here, so we got to rely on some of our tactics, some of our businesses to really help police themselves. And the issue downtown has always been it's overconsumption. As much as people may not want to talk about it, that's what the issue is. It's people drinking too much. When you drink too much alcohol, you make bad decisions, you do goofy things. And that usually results in a police intervention or somebody calling and saying there's a fight. The other issue with the downtown, it's a small area, so you have compression. So you have a lot of people in a small area, you add alcohol and you get a bump, you get a push here, you get somebody saying something here, next thing you know, you have a conflict, and then we're getting involved. And then the people who are in this intoxicated state aren't the most friendly people. So they don't exactly, when the police officers say, stop what you're doing, or we're going to arrest you, we get in a verbal confrontation. They're usually intoxicated, so they're not acting in a logical manner. So then we have to get involved and we have to separate those people from the group, and usually that separation results in an arrest and a trip down to the police department. So I'm very pleased to see with the new regulations we put in place, or the council put in place last year, we are seeing a dramatic decrease in some of the fights in the downtown. The key regulation being that the people within the last hour, they can't serve shots, so people get all liquored up right before they leave. So that's been a key, the lack of shots close to the exit time, as well as not being able to move from establishment to establishment in that last hour. Like once you're in a place, you have to stay, so we don't have that traffic on the streets, on the sidewalks right around closing time. So those have been positives that we've seen so far. The key will be how we come through this summer, because the regulations were just enacted last fall. So the true test is, and we're watching the data. As you know, we have 10 metrics that we're tracking, and that we provide a report to the Liquor Commission and the council every 3 months.
Well, and it's a challenge. You don't want to take away somebody's right to go downtown and have a good time, but it's a flashpoint. It goes very quickly between a good time and to a bad time.
Right, and we've had some tragedies down there.
We have.
And that's something we don't want to see happen again.
Right, and our tragedies seem to be surrounding youth.
And alcohol.
Oh, right. So when you were thinking about being chief as a patrol officer, did these types of problems and having to figure out solutions come to mind on that?
Not really.
Not really, yeah.
No, I didn't think a lot about that. The terrorism stuff, the issues we're seeing with the mental health right now is a key issue for law enforcement. Those issues, probably the biggest change that I've seen since when I first started as a patrol officer to what I'm seeing now as a chief of police is cyber crimes. The explosion, like I mentioned earlier, of the internet, social media, so many more things are happening. We have a special unit here in the police department that deals with cyber crimes. And you're seeing bullying on cyber crimes. You're seeing crimes being committed over the internet. That's something that I didn't see as a young police officer. It just wasn't on the radar screen. The use of technology is another thing that I didn't have. I mean, we had a radio, that was it. Right now we have computers in the squad cars. We have audio-visual in-car video systems in our squad cars. So we didn't have the technology. The technology, the way I look at it in the future, is going to drive the most successful law enforcement agencies. Those law enforcement agencies that best use technology and intelligence information are you going to be your successful departments. And one of the areas one of our top priorities is our strategic technology plan here that we have operational in the police department to really upgrade all of our technology. And that's going to make a big difference in how we do our jobs going forward.
Well, and I think it'll make you be quicker and swifter and able to, especially in communication, to get across to multiple people, because we're all using technology.
Yeah, you are. And one of the first things we did at RibFest, we had that tragic suicide just last weekend. We have a social media, we have a Twitter account in the police department. One of the things we did, myself and the deputy chief, we got on Twitter right away and we tweeted out what had happened down there, because we were hearing all these false rumors. So we got on Twitter. So we, as a department, we recognize the value of communicating with the public through social media, and that's a top priority for our department as well.
Well, I think it's really smart because everybody else is communicating with social media. Yeah. Why not you? And the police department too. So as you think about Chief and future goals, you mentioned technology. You have a couple other big future goals for 2015. Share a little bit with that.
Yeah. When I first started, May of 2012, I came into the department with 6 areas of focus. And the first one was best practices to deliver police services as defined by the residents. And we regularly have a community survey, and I just got the quarterly report from the residents on what they want their police department to do. So that's very important. So one of the key initiatives there is something we're doing right now. We have hired a consultant, because when I first started, I'd go to the roll calls and the officers would tell me, Chief, we need more police officers. And I'd say, well, how many? 5, 6, 10? How do we know? So one of the things we've looked at is, when is the last time we've really done a personnel allocation workload analysis study? I've asked people here, we can't even remember the last time we really did that. When the community grew, we just added patrol beats. We started with 4, now we're up to 10 or 11 patrol beats if you count the front desk. So we've just added beats, but we've really never done an in-depth study analysis of how many police officers we need to patrol the city of Naperville. So what we've done is we've gone out, we did an RFP, we've had one consultant that won this bid, and they've just started working with our staff, and they're gathering a lot of data to provide us with some recommendations later this year on workload analysis and how many police officers, as well as civilian employees, we need to adequately provide public safety for the city of Naperville. So that's a key initiative. We're also going to examine our beat structure. How many beats do we need? Do we need more? Do we need less? These are all questions.
What's the typical mileage in a beat? I mean, how do you determine what a beat is?
Well, we determine it by geographical boundaries, usually. We don't want our beats crossing the railroad tracks, for example, because we don't want officers, and the fire department does the same thing. We can't be held up by a train if we get there. So we do it by geographical boundaries. We do it for calls for service. How many calls do we get in certain locations? So that's historically what we've done. With the changes in technology and data, we want to take a new look at that. And that's what we're doing with this, working with this consultant, to really look at calls for service. And one of the most important indicators is, of course, response time. What do residents expect when they call 911? They want police and fire there immediately. So we're looking at response time, making sure that we can get to where we need to be in the most efficient manner. So we're looking at response times. When people move to Naperville, what do you hear about them? One of the things they want: good schools. We want public safety. We want, our families to be safe. So we're looking at all that, taking a holistic approach on our workload analysis, response times, and all that. And by the end of the year, we're going to have some recommendations that are going to come to me, and we'll make some decisions as a staff as to what we're going to do in terms of our allocation of personnel and our beat structure. So I'm very excited about that project. The other one I mentioned is our strategic technology plan. We're in year 3 of our plan. We're looking at what we've accomplished so far and what do we need to go forward. We've just implemented our in-car camera system. That's a year old now, so we're looking at that. There's a lot of talk throughout the country about body cameras. And one of the things I wanted to do when I first heard about this, and there's legislation in the state of Illinois that is going to direct police departments to have body cameras. Now, it's non-mandatory, but it's something that in the future we'll have to take a very hard look at, and we're taking a serious look at it right now. One of the things I want to know is, what do our residents think? This is your police department. Do you want your police officers to be equipped with a body camera and an audio system when they come to your house when you call them? So we have on our website right now 6 or 7 questions for residents. So we're getting feedback from our residents about what they want from their police department. So this is all data that we're gathering, and eventually we'll be making a decision along with other police departments in the state of Illinois about the use of body cameras.
We often think of body cameras in more public settings, like when we're out downtown or something, how a body cam might help there. But it's another thing when you call them for a domestic dispute or something like that. Right. Suddenly it's a very big invasion of privacy.
It is, and then your neighbors will see 3 or 4 police cars at your house, and guess what they're going to do? Yeah. Do a FOIA. Yeah. Why, and we'll have to look at that, and it's really more complicated than of an issue, and it needs to be addressed, a lot of it with policy, and it really needs to be studied, and you want to make sure that people's privacy is protected. And I don't want the body camera to impact the relationship we have with the community, with residents being able to talk to us freely without knowing that they're being audio and videotaped. We routinely talk to juveniles. So we talk to people that are involved in conflict situations. Do you want that out there?
Right, because we often think that the body cam will somehow protect us and show us what the officer is doing, but it's really showing us what the officer is seeing.
Right.
Which is a little different.
And we talk about technology, and right now, most body cameras are located where? Right here. Mm-hmm. So if an officer, for example, is using force, if their gun, guess what's here? If a taser or things like that, that body camera is blocking the view, so you're not going to get the whole picture. Also, there's new cameras that are up on glasses, so if the officer turns his head, are you going to see what's over here? So sometimes it doesn't tell the whole story, and that's what you want the body camera, the technology do. It's got to be able to tell the whole story.
Right, or at least a good part of it. I don't know if it'll be able to tell the whole story, because I think stories have so many sides and so many angles, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with technology, because we record in everything in life these days, and we of everything happening around us. So
right, it's out there anyways. People are using their cell phones, and everybody's got a camera now. So you're on, and our officers know that when they're out in public, they're subject to being videotaped every day, and it's happening every single day.
Right. Any type of movement, people are thinking, gee, can I get this up on YouTube? And
right, get so many likes, and I don't understand all that, what the benefits are, but there must be some.
There's something. So as you think forward with being police chief, and tell me a little bit about how your family has gone along with you on this journey. So when I'm looking at pictures in your room here of your 2 boys and one daughter, and they were little. Yeah. When you were off, were the assistant manager, city manager, when you and I first really met and got to know one another. They were just, elementary, cute, and now I'm looking at them and they're all grown up.
Yeah, they are. And I also have an older daughter that's 30 years old, that she's married, and she lives in Wheaton. So I have 2 daughters and 2 boys that are twins, and my wife Barb, and very supportive of what I do here. Love living in Naperville, and I've been very supportive in the decisions I've made, because like I tell my staff, this is not a job where you can just unplug. As a police chief, and as a commander, or as a deputy chief. I mean, there's constantly something going on. I'm constantly getting emails from residents, from council members, from just everybody. So you can't just say, well, on Friday night, I'm going to unplug and we'll see you on Monday. So I'm constantly doing. So my family understands that, and they've provided me with a lot of love and support in my profession. And I think my 15-year-old daughter, not too cool having your dad the police chief. That's the kind of indications I'm getting from her and her friends, And she was just dating this young man, and she had to counsel me on my behavior the first time I met him to make sure I wasn't in uniform, my gun wasn't visible, so I got that counseling from her, prior to meeting him. So I behaved myself.
That's good. It sounds like it might have went well.
It did.
Yeah, good. Good. Well, that's I didn't think about that. Yes, you must be a very tough guy to meet for your kids off the bat.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, my boys. You know, one of my boys wants to be a police officer, and he even said, I want to be chief someday, like my dad. The other one's more into, he'd love to be, a third baseman on the Chicago Cubs or an architect, something like that. But two very different boys, but they are very much more excited about my profession than my two daughters were.
One time when you and I were out, we were looking at buildings for NCTV. One of the things that struck me was how observant you were. And that because you can be a little bit more quiet, but that's because you're a smart cop and you're letting everybody tell you everything. I thought that was one of the biggest tips I ever got from you.
Really, that's very insightful. I have a mentor, a coach, an executive coach that I've hired throughout the years, and that was one of the traits that he noticed about me, that I'm kind of looking around, taking things in, very inquisitive and insightful, and I've always prided myself on being a good listener and taking things in before I come to a decision or express my opinions and viewpoints, ensuring that I have all the facts and data before I make decisions and render opinions on things. So that's interesting that you picked up that trait, because I know my staff sees it. I'm at a staff meeting and I'm letting them talk, but I'm taking everything in and I'm watching everything, and I'm taking notes too.
Right, and I'm sure they're thinking, "Oh my God, I wonder what he's thinking." Right. But that's a good traits for a reporter too. So if the chief gig doesn't work out for you, come see me over at NCTV. I can get you a reporter gig going, because those are great traits for the reporter
Thank
too.
you. I'll keep that in mind.
So another career along the way. So you're 3 years in, 4 years into being police chief, and have a good plan going forward. So I wish you a lot of luck. We'll be paying attention.
I'm sure you will, Les. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're in good hands. So thanks for taking a few minutes to sit down and chat with me and our viewers to let us get to know you a little bit more.
I very much enjoyed it, and thank you.